and I think in both platforms people are already in. So inshallah, boleh.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Inshallah, we will commence the event momentarily. Before we begin, I have some housekeeping announcement. Please make sure your microphone is in mute mode throughout the session. The talk will be an hour, followed by a 15 minutes questions and answer session. You are invited to post the questions in the chat box. Please write your name, kuliah, center, or your organizations at the beginning of the questions for identification. Your moderator will read the questions for you. For your information, this event will be live streaming through the IIUM official YouTube channel. For IIUM staff, please log in to the iAttend link given in the Zoom and also YouTube chat box. For all audience, please fill out the evaluation form at the end of the session. The link will be shared in the chat box later. For your information, in the Zoom chat box and the IIUM official YouTube, there is a flipbook link for the program ebook. So please feel free to browse through the program ebook to get to know the details of our event today. Okay, so we will begin the events. In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most compassionate, let us begin our professorial lecture event. The Honorable Deputy Rector of Academic and Internationalization, Professor Dr. Ahmad Faris bin Ismail, the respected Dean of Kuliah of Education, Professor Dr. Nurlida binti Abu Qasim, the respected Deans and Directors of IIUM Kuliah, Centers and Institute, distinguished guests, eminent speaker, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'. With the grace of the Almighty, we are all given a chance to be here today in this auspicious event. It is with great pleasure to welcome all of you to this professorial lecture featuring Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin to deliver his lecture entitled Assessment for Learning, an Approach to Humanizing Education. This event is brought to you exclusively by the Kuliah of Education, International Islamic University, Malaysia. My name is Putri Azlian Megat Ramli, Assistant Professor from Kuliah of Education, and I am the Master of Ceremony for today's event. Together with me, we will have Professor Dr. Ainul Maziah Zubairi, our prominent professor from Kuliah of Education, as the moderator for this professorial lecture. Other than the lecture, additionally, we are delightful to do an e-launching for the book which was written by our distinguished speaker, Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari. Before we begin with the ceremony, to seek blessing for this event, I would like to invite Dr. Ni Matsaiful Azizi bin Ni Abdullah, Deputy Dean, Student Development and Community Engagement, International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTEC, to begin our session with the recitations of Umukitab Al-Fatiha and Dua. Please welcome Dr. Ni Saiful.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatiha. A'udzu billahi as-sami'il 'alim minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin, arrahmanir rahim. Maliki yaumiddin, iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin as-sadiqil wa'dil amin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yaumiddin. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa 'amalan mutaqabbala. Oh Allah, we ask you for knowledge that is beneficial, a good provision, and deed that will be accepted. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilma. Oh Allah, make useful for us what you taught us and teach us knowledge that will be useful to us. Increase us in knowledge. Allahumma inna na'udzu bika min ilmin la yanfa' wa min qalbin la yakhsha' wa min nafsin la tashba' wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha. Oh Allah, we are seeking refuge in you from a knowledge that is not beneficial. We are seeking refuge from you from a heart that knows fear Allah, from a soul that is not satisfied, from a dua that is not answered. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Allahumma faqihna fid din wa 'allimna at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, grant us understanding of deen. Ya Dzal Jalali wal Ikram, sesungguhnya pada pagi yang penuh bersejarah ini kami berhimpun di sini untuk menjayakan Professorial lecture oleh Profesor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin. Mohamad Sahari. Justru itu ya Allah, rahmatilah majlis ini, berkatilah, kurniakanlah kepada kami kefahaman ilmu, sinarilah hati kami dengan cahaya hidayahmu. Semoga dengannya kami dapat menghayati dan mengamalkan apa yang kami pelajari. Ya Allah, Ya Karim, Ya Wadud, ada di kalangan kami pada hari ini yang diuji dengan kesakitan, Kau sembuhkanlah ya Allah. Diuji dengan kesusahan, Kau bantulah dia ya Allah. Ada di kalangan kami yang diuji dengan kesedihan, Kau kabarkanlah berita gembira untuknya ya Allah. Ada di kalangan kami yang diuji dengan kesempitan, Kau lapangkanlah dirinya ya Allah. Ya Allah Tuhan kami, kurniakanlah kepada kami hati yang tenang, jiwa yang tenteram, serta ruh yang sentiasa mempunyai sifat syukur, sabar, ikhlas dan amanah dalam melakukan setiap pekerjaan. Kau jauhkanlah daripada kami sifat-sifat mazmumah, sifat ujub, riak, takabur, fitnah, buruk sangka dan khianat. Sesungguhnya itu adalah penghalang kepada kami untuk menuju syurga idaman. Allah arinal haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arinal batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah. Allahumma ja'alna minal ladzina yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsanah wa adkhilna bi rahmatika fi ibadikas salihin. Allahumma ij'al jam'ana hadha jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqana min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma wa la taj'al Allahumma fina wala ma'ana wala man yatba'una shaqiyan wala matrudan wala mahruma. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Dr. Nid Saiful, for the Doa recitation. Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, the event will proceed with the national anthem, Negaraku, and followed by IIUM song, Leading the Way.
Baris! Baris! Tenang! Three! Baris! Baris! Diam! Dari three! Cepat! Jalan! Baris! Stay!
Lead the way, lighten the future, share the wisdom to the spirit of Islam. Revelation and reason shall excel, shall prevail. Merging faith and knowledge, we the Khalifa, we will fulfill the amanah. Together, we make the world a better place. Forever, expand the culture of Iqra. IIUM is to realize the meaning of Ramadan lil Alamin. Together we make the world a better place. Forever expand the culture of Iqra. IIUM is to realize the meaning of mercy to all the world, for all mankind.
Leading the Way is the official song of IIUM. The song highlights the vision, mission, and principles of IIUM. IIUM aspires to restore the dynamic and progressive roles of Muslims in all branches of knowledge and intellectual discourse. Without further ado, now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ahmad Faris bin Ismail, the Deputy Rector, Academic and Internationalization, to deliver the opening speech for this event. Please welcome Professor Dr. Faris.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. La hawla wa la quwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Thank you very much, Dr. Putri Azlian, as the MC for this morning. Respected guru and also the speaker of our professorial lecture, Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin, my colleagues, the Dean of Kuliah of Education, Professor Nurlida, the moderator for today, which is also the former Dean, Professor Ainul, colleagues, professors, lecturers, brothers and sisters, especially from the Kuliah of Education, as well as from other kuliahs, as well as I'm sure maybe some of Professor Sahari's students also are tuning in to see his great lecturer and professor delivering the speech this morning. So we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, for allowing us to have this very, I would say, significant and I would say that also important event. Okay, so I would like to thank, of course, first of all, Professor Dr. Sahari for agreeing to be the speaker for this professorial lecture. I would like also to congratulate the Kuliah of Education for arranging this event. For the university, this event is very important. We have decided that all kuliahs should conduct their professorial lecture to celebrate their professors. So this is a celebration. This is, we want the kuliahs to showcase and to share the wisdom and the knowledge that they have at the kuliah. So this is one of the means where the kuliahs can share their strengths, their expertise to the world. That is, I think, our goal. With the hope that with this sharing, then it will promote more conversation and more interdisciplinary interest and promote collaboration and working together. Okay? And as a matter of fact, Kuliah of Education for me is one of the backbones of the university. Okay, because our business is education, and I'm very sure that all other kuliahs would really want to learn from the Kuliah of Education on what are the best ways and means and tools, to deliver education, effective and impactful education to our students. And this is very much now becoming more important with our launching of our Sejahtera Academic Framework. So if you read the Sejahtera Academic Framework that we launched, the backbone is education. On top of that, we are talking about humanizing education. So thank you very much, Prof. Sahari, for choosing the topic, assessment for learning and approach to humanizing education. So I guess all lecturers, professors, our colleagues at IIUM should learn from this talk, because this is the main objective of our Sejahtera Academic Framework, to humanize education. So I look forward to learn and from Prof. Sahari. So again, like I mentioned, I mean, Kuliah of Education should be one of the important backbone, not only for the university, but I would say that we also have the holistic approach, the integrated approach that we also should share with the nation. Okay, with all the Malaysian educational system, starting from maybe the pre-K up to the school levels, up to tertiary levels. Okay, and of course now we are talking about even the lifelong learning education. So I guess Kuliah Education has a very important role to play. In this whole holistic approach. As well as, of course, being an international university, we also have our responsibility for our ummah, I think, and also be an also international university. Also, we also, should share the good values, the good methods that we are using. For not only for the Muslim countries, but for all the world. And I'm very sure that some of you have been doing that with your colleagues and partners all around the world. So I guess by now, I think we know that we have set up this center, IIUM Center for Measurement, Evaluation, and Testing, IMET, which is headed by Professor Sahari himself. He's now the director of this IMET, and the university again has high hopes to look for the center. To provide good inputs, advice, proposals, suggestions for the university as a way forward in our testing and measurement. So meaning to say that we are not only looking at the conventional assessment, okay, we are also looking at the alternative assessment, as well as now there is a new challenge. How can we also assess the intangibles? So meaning to say that beyond the quantitative assessment, how can we also go to the qualitative assessment? Can we also do, where we are talking about as a part of our Sejahtera academic framework, producing holistic graduates. They are not only good in terms of their, I would say, knowledge, okay, but also, we want also to talk about their attitudes, their behaviors, their akhlaq, and now I think we also have a task force on spirituality. So can we go into that direction? So to look at the comprehensive assessment. So we hope that I think Prof Sahari with his energy and his team, can help us and can guide us and also guide other kuliahs in this direction, so that inshallah I think we can achieve the objective that we would like to have. I would like also to congratulate Professor Sahari for his book that we are going to launch today, Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah, Penerapan Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan. Okay, so this is, I think, another important milestone. I think it should become a good book and a good guideline for all our lecturers and teachers. So I guess so because education is cut across, and I'm very sure that the experts at Kuliah of Education can share their expertise through trainings, through collaborations with other kuliahs. Because as we can see, I think with the new young generation of students that we are having, we have to revisit and relook at how we deliver our curriculum. Okay, and of course, in addition to that, now we have this pandemic that forced us to think out of the box, force us how to rethink. Do we need to go back to face-to-face classrooms, or we can now maybe learn from the pandemic, and maybe post-pandemic education will be different. I'm not sure. I think this is also another big research question that we have to do. What will the post-pandemic university education look like after the pandemic? My last point for today is people now start discussing and thinking about the relevance of university education for the future. So that's why I think this is also very important for the Kuliah of Education, and also for all of us in the university to revisit and to rethink, do some muhasabah, and see what is the university way forward. Okay, because for example, I think if we are just talking about, my background is from engineering. We have been debating and arguing with the industry about education, because when we talk to the industry, let's say automotive industry, they always tell us, please produce engineers that are ready to work in my factory. So we say that in the university. No, we do not educate our students that way. Okay, we are talking more about. That's why this humanizing education is important. We are not just producing robotics people, or just one skill people. Okay, we are talking about producing human beings, producing good leaders, producing good thinkers, producing good people who can generate ideas, producing people that can solve problems of the world. So I think this debate will go on, and this is, I think, will be a challenge for your kuliah. So thank you very much, Kuliah of Education, and thank you much, Professor Sahari, for this event. May Allah Subhanahu wa Taala bless all efforts. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Faris, for the enlightening opening speech. We will now proceed for the e-launching of the book written by our distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin. Before that, let us watch a video in order to know who is this Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari.
Professor Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin is a lecturer at the Kuliah of Education, KOED, International Islamic University, Malaysia, for the last 34 years. He is one of KOED's prominent professors who is a leading expert in an assessment and research. Professor Dr. Mohamad Sahari began his career at IIUM in 1987 and has become an icon in his own right. He contributes to the planning, implementation, and research in the areas of testing, assessment at higher education, and teacher education locally and internationally. Professor Dr. Mohamad Sahari had organized and facilitated several performance assessment projects for the King Abdulaziz University and Tabuk University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He also has been appointed a consultant of a benchmarking project by the International Associations of Universities, Belgium, in addition to several capacity development and research-based OIC-sponsored projects in Uganda and Indonesia. His research collaborations with the Australian Council of Educational Research, ASER, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Emir Research, MOSTI, KPM and KPT on assessment, instrument development, innovation in teaching and learning, as well as social-related issues are exemplary. As a core member of the IIUM Electoral Studies Research Unit, Professor Dr. Mohamad Sahari has led a number of research on public opinion about issues related to Malaysian politics.
Without further ado, it is with a great pleasure I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ahmad Faris again to launch the book, which is written by our distinguished speaker, Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari, entitled Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah, Penerapan Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan, Classroom Assessment, Applications of National Education Policy, which is published by Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka, DBP. Please welcome Professor Dr. Faris.
The book was written to meet the needs of educators, especially teachers. This book is also suitable for text and reference material for trainees eligible to be certified as trained teachers in primary or secondary school. Based on the best practices of classroom assessment, PBD, this writing contains a corpus of practical and innovative knowledge and skills that can help educators implement teaching and assessment for learning to help their students master meaningful learning.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Faris, for launching the book. Now we will have a photography session, okay, for those who are at Zoom now. So I would like to invite everyone, okay, to on your camera and smile. Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, you smile to your own camera, everyone. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we have another screen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay. Distinguished audience, brothers and sisters. Now we have come to the main events of our ceremony. With that, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ainul Maziah Zubairi to moderate this professorial lecture. Please welcome Professor Dr. Ainul.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Putri, the MC. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. The Honorable Deputy Rector of Academic and Internationalization, Professor Dr. Ahmad Faris bin Ismail, our respected Dean of the Kuliah of Education, Prof. Dr. Nolida Abu Qasim, Deans and Directors of the IIUM Kuliah Center Institute, our distinguished guests. I think we have a guest from the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, as well as from schools, public university and private universities. Our eminent speaker, Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari Nordin, brothers and sisters, colleagues in IIUM, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Indeed, before I start and moderate the session, I would like to just share my own view of Professor Sahari and also just an overview of his background. Yeah. I'm indeed very honored to be given the task to moderate this session. Prof. Sahari started his career as a teacher. Yeah. It was only after almost 10 years of becoming a teacher in Johor as well as Pahang. He joined IIUM only in 1987. And in the last 30 years that he has been in this university, I think the university has seen how he has helped a lot in terms of not just in areas of his expertise, which is in assessment, but also in other areas in establishing things at the research center, as well as the ANR when he was the dean in ANR, but also now recently he has helped to set up the new Center for Assessment, or IMAT. And I have a personal 20 years experience, almost 20 years experience working with him. And he has always been consistent to be seen as a very quiet man. Yeah. Professor Sahari, I think, is apt as an example of diam-diam ubi berisi, diam-diam ubi. Yeah. He's a very quiet person. You will not be able to sit down with him and talk for long unless you talk about research. And his research, as we have seen in the earlier screen show, ranged from not just assessment, but also in teacher education, teacher competency, and in measurement. But most importantly, I learned about the culture of working and culture of doing research from him in terms of, number one, sincerity. And from him, I learned sincerity in doing research is not about being truthful and honest, but also in terms of the research that we do for the society. So if you see in the screen just now and you see the CV of Professor Sahari, it is evident from the impact work that he has done, not just to the university in terms of his research, but also to the country and other parts of the world. Okay. So today, I think it is timely that we not just celebrate him and his new book, another book that will bring impact, inshallah, to teacher education in this country as far as educating teachers on best practices of assessment. But also, we would like to hear from him in his lecture. probably will be an overview of the content of the book. Yeah. So without further ado, I would like to call upon Professor Sahari to the screen to deliver his lecture. Tafaddal, Mashkura. Thank you. Yeah, and before that, any questions in both platforms? Can you please just write them in YouTube and also in Zoom? I will attend to them at the end of the session. So Tafaddal, Prof. Sahari, you have about 1 hour from now. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Qala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Madam Chairperson, Professor Ainol, thank you. And of course, Honorable Deputy Rector of Academic and Internationalization, Prof. Dr. Ahmad Faris Ismail, respected Dean of Kuliah of Education, Prof. Dr. Nolidi Abu Qasim, Deans and Directors of IIUM Kuliah Center and Institute, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The title of this presentation is Assessment for Learning, an approach to humanizing education. I've been informed by the organizer that I'm supposed to read the text, so I'm not a good reader, so do forgive me whatever shortcoming in trying to read as a newscaster, but I'll try my level best, inshallah. There are only 4 things that I have with me right now about related to this topic. The first one is about the fundamentals, the building blocks of this discussion, which are the intangibles themselves, the assessment for learning, human nature, and intangibles. And the second point that I'm going to spend on is on the intangibles in teaching and learning. Number 3, the one that almost everybody is trying hard to accomplish in all aspects of education, that is measuring intangibles in education. And number 4 is what the Honorable Deputy Rector mentioned just now. Maybe we have a look at assessment, not measuring, but assessment of intangibles, in particular, a classroom assessment of intangibles, which has been established in Malaysian schools since 2011, but it has been with us in institution of higher education since the first time we started having a university. We've been doing classroom assessment. So these are the only 4 points that I'm going to share. And the whole idea is aiming to initiate a practitioner-centric discourse on the efficacy of assessment in nurturing the intangibles. The intangible can be defined as student learning outcome that cannot be observed or measured directly. Intangibles such as students' confidence, students' critical thinking, empathy, self-efficacy, self-esteem, tons of them, constitute more than 90% of students' potential as human beings, thereby facilitate the intention, our intention to humanize education. What is this assessment for learning? Assessment for learning is any form of measurement. Measure, the word measurement here, or measuring, which we are very familiar with, and evaluation that aims to promote learning and teaching. Assessment for learning helps learning if it provides information that lecturers and their students can use as feedback and feed forward to assess their own learning and modify teaching and learning activities. Such assessment becomes formative assessment when the evidence is actually used to adapt teaching to meet the needs of students. So the focus is always our students. Central to the idea of this assessment for learning central to this to AFL are the ideas of formative assessment, that is giving feedback to students in ways that enable them to improve and providing feedback to help them plan their next learning steps. It is quite clear that the fundamental purpose of assessment for learning is not merely grading students, but rather to help them learn more and acquire greater potential. Therefore, assessment for learning is a catalyst for reform in instructional practices as it develops students' self-regulated and autonomous learning ability. These two are critical skills for lifelong learning in the 21st century's sustainable education. Assessment for learning also bridges between theory and practice and creates a shared academic culture dedicated to assuring and improving the quality of higher education. And these are the steps or the elements of assessment for learning. There is, in practicing that, we normally begins with deciding on the objective of the assessment. And then we'll provide treatment, educational treatment, classroom intervention, teaching, and learning activities. And we provide a feed forward for students to understand the treatment. Then we guide students, we teach them, and we elicit their performance for us to measure and evaluate the levels or the variation in their performance. The results of measuring and evaluating is giving feedback and feed forward. And one more thing which is critical in assessment for learning is we should facilitate error correction. The error correction activities by students should be recognized and rewarded. So the whole process constitutes learning for assessment for learning. We are very familiar with the red-colored words, measure and evaluation. Maybe we also have been doing the first step, deciding the objectives and the tasks. Either it's going to be a test or a project. That's the very first step we have to do when we do our conventional assessment, and we teach them and we ask them to perform and measure. But the last two steps, maybe we have to enhance our understanding and competency in that. So to humanize education, the curriculum of our education, pedagogy and assessment must be built upon fitrah. There is human nature, and human nature is largely defined by people's beliefs in what they are. Our beliefs constitute how we look at ourselves and our place in this universe and how we live our personal and professional lives. As teachers, as lecturers, the beliefs that we subscribe influence what we teach in the classroom, how we teach it, and how we assess student learning outcomes, most of which are not tangible. By intangible, we mean that the outcomes do not have a specific and concrete form. But this does not mean that they are less important than those tangible ones. Unfortunately, the overriding importance placed on communication, on commercialization, and on student learning being concrete, measurable, standardized, and tangibles has caused many of us, many lecturers and teachers, to discard assessing students' outcomes that are intangibles. In many aspects, the intangibles are greater in value than the tangibles. And all these things should be based on our beliefs about human nature. Again, I keep on repeating the same phrase: to humanize curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, and must be built. All these three things, the pillars of education, curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment must be built upon human nature. Okay, and this what most people, many people, in fact, 25% of the world, at least 25% of the world population believes that man's existence is neither accidental nor is it a natural adaptation of organisms. We are created to worship the Creator and to gain His pleasure by promoting good and repelling evil and harm in every aspect of our lives and faith. We are taught how to worship and given feedback about it. We are told where our intention, our niyat, and good deeds, our amal, will take us, and given feed forward about how to correct them so that we end up in the right place. That's what we believe. That is in the God's paradise. In short, Allah educates us about redemption and gives us every chance to redeem ourselves. He has given us willpower and the ability to choose. Everyone is assessed and tested to help them learn and improve in their worship of the Creator. These are all intangible aspects of our lives and our relationship with God Almighty. Therefore, to humanize education, we should not ignore the teaching and assessment of these beliefs, which are tangibles at the same time, which are intangibles. That's what I mean. Now, based on this, we may try to relate the two things, the assessment of learning that people around the globe trying to secure now, including our national school system, and our beliefs about human nature. If we can do that, if we really try to do that, then we are trying to humanize education. Based on what we have seen just now, there seems may dawn upon us that there's clear link with regard these two constructs, beliefs and teaching, belief and education. It may dawn upon us that upon many that these beliefs are guiding us, okay, on what to be learned, what students and we ourselves need to learn, what and how to teach, what and how to assess. So these beliefs should lead us doing something, not to say different, something more meaningful, more fulfilling in terms of our teaching practices. In the context of IIUM, Okay, we have a policy on assessment. Assessment rests on the university's belief about human nature. Implicitly in the policy is there. The first of our beliefs is that we are to humbly submit to God's will, divine ordinance, and commandments to earn his pleasure. Allah sent prophets to numerous nations and generations to convey his words and will. He revealed holy books to prophets. Across time and space, mankind has been endowed with a consistent and verified corpus of knowledge containing definite truths, divine paths, and the right and wrongs of things. Mankind is taught and given feedback about their purpose in life through his words, messengers, prophets, and scholars, the ulama. In life, in our professional life included, we are continuously being assessed to learn and improve ourselves. To approach perfection, every single one of us is subjected to assessment for learning throughout our life. We believe that worship represents everything we say, think, intend, and do for the sake and pleasure of Allah. It covers rituals, practices, beliefs, norms, and intra and interpersonal interactions that contribute to our well-being, as well as the welfare of fellow human beings and other creatures. Most of these, called the intangibles, are difficult to be observed, but be reminded that the validity of our classroom assessments, since we hold dear to these beliefs, the validity of our classroom assessment practices is contingent upon the extent to which they, meaning the assessment practice, measure and evaluate teaching and learning that aim to facilitate students and our own growth in securing the pleasure of Allah. So we can relate the steps, objective, treatment, perform, evaluate, and feedback as the process of assessment for learning with our beliefs about our being. So this the chart that may help us to reflect upon. Now let's get to the next point. There is intangibles in teaching and learning. Intangibles are invisible, but their presence is felt. More importantly, their impacts are profound. Intangibles are what we feel or think to be there, but can't quite put our finger on it. In the context of education, we can create a long list of intangibles. For example, what makes effective teaching may invariably include the difficult to measure lecturers and teachers' attitudes, our tacit knowledge, pedagogical orientation, confidence, approachability, and even job satisfaction. This figure, I've taken it from my best friend Google's website, was presented by our rector, our honorable rector, Tan Sri Zulkifli. It depicts a conception of intangibles in education back in 2013. It is represented by an ice mask. Intangibles such as value system, learning styles, thinking styles, emotion-related constructs, and beliefs are, in fact, the drivers of one's learning. Students learning as well as we as a human being who keeps on learning. Beyond this, there are other intangibles. For example, learning motivation and teaching effectiveness, which are considered as predictors of meaningful student learning. That's the ultimate outcome, student learning. However, as indicated by Tan Sri Zulkifli, values and other intangibles are the primary considerations in ensuring not only what the student can be, but also what they can become when nurtured by the right intangible values. As Murabbis, we need to identify the critical intangible, assess and act on the critical, impactful intangibles as they may enable us to help students and help ourselves to realize their potential and our potential. In the field of business, is becoming very distinct now that the focus is on the intangibles. They believe too that intangibles are invisible, yet their presence is known. And the impacts of the intangibles are profound. And organizations' strategy must deal with these intangibles. This is what they been stated in open platform. The intangibles transform the way organizations work, the way employees are managed, the way products are designed, the way services are sold, the way customers are treated. To approach excellence, they must deal with these intangibles. Trying to find them, measure them, and react to them may be difficult, but the ability to do this exists. Education is full of intangibles. Knowledge, research, teaching, learning, and even community service are the most focused intangibles of lecturers and students at institutions of higher education. These intangibles, for example, student academic performance, even until now, constitute the ultimate outcomes of teaching and learning at a university. And this is just an example of efforts that have been attempted to identify and measure intangibles. Okay, this table rank orders a list of intangibles that influence students' academic success as perceived by undergraduates. If we observe that the first top three most important or most forceful intangibles related to student success are regular study, regular attendance at lecture, hard work, commitment, and dedication, and even number 6, assignment, completion, and submission. These are self-regulated behaviors of students. That's what makes them successful. Nothing beats effort. That's what my teacher used to remind me. And this can be malleable through classroom intervention. Teachers can do, lecturers can do something about efforts, students' effort. And maybe that's the thing we can focus when we talk about assessment. Since we have a substantial amount of knowledge about them, most of the listed intangibles are quantifiable. Therefore, they can be measured. And therefore, they fit with the objectivist approach to measure the quality of teaching and learning. However, there are many intangibles which we don't really understand in full yet, that are brimming with values and social contextual elements. And these are more challenging. Thus, most of them have been ignored, although we are aware of their importance. Since the advent of humanistic and constructivist approaches, there is a steady increase in the interest to deal with the more difficult to measure intangibles. However, international organizations, in particular the OECD and UNESCO, have established themselves as the forerunners in this initiative. Based on its international comparison analytics, for instance, the OECD published the first results of what they call beyond academic learning study in 2019. It's a survey, and it measured school children's social and emotional skills across participating countries. The figure contains some of the recently identified intangibles from this organization, and is related to two dimensions of education, two important components of or stakeholders of education: the teachers and the student themselves. Teachers' attributes contribute to student success. And what the attributes are? Teachers' job satisfaction, teachers' self-efficacy, self-reflective practices, selflessness. Lifelong learner teachers make a difference in students' success, and teachers who are having fun. I'm not sure about this. Maybe we should conduct a study here. And students' disposition or predisposition. Again, the word confidence or efficacy, academic efficacy, students' confidence, teachers' efficacy seems to be a very important determinant of success, determinant of student success from this institution. Self-regulated behavior, the effort, which are well-planned, well-organized. Social emotional well-being, insan sejahtera, that's very close to us. Insan sejahtera, in fact, that's our belief. There's another important determinant of success. Reflective, self-reflective, and peer assessment, and of course, adab and social interaction. These are the commonly studied and examined intangibles, which they think are the precursor to student success. By the way, there's a quote here by Winston Churchill, which I think most of you are familiar with. Something like, it's not complete there. Yes, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Okay? Courage to continue. Another intangible, another factor that will decide on the outcome. The IIUM in particular considers intangibles such as insan sejahtera, student adab, and lecturers murabbi orientation to be of paramount importance and must be given due attention. So we must try to understand this, then identify aspects that can be measured and the aspect that can be treated. Okay, now we come to the third point, which is a popular topic in research across discipline, be it in economics or even in nursing. I found some work on this, and let alone in education. It's something very important that people are getting more interested in. For more than 1 decade, the OECD and UNESCO have been developing instruments to quantitatively measure intangibles they consider important in teaching and learning. Even testing agencies such as the Australian Council for Educational Research, ACR, and Educational Testing Services, they are now exploring cross-culture invariants of the instruments that exist. Research institutions and groups of researchers, IIUM faculty members included, are contributing evidence on the validity and reliability of this instrument. Many of the validated instruments are readily available online. Here we are going to share some information about four instruments, which are teachers' job satisfaction, identified as one of the dominant predictors of success. Online teaching efficacy, something which is current and relevant, online teaching efficacy. Students self-defeating learning habits, okay, procrastination, for instance, and sejahtera culture, which is a feature of IIUM. These instruments, which are available at your fingertip, can be used in one's self-reflection formatively. Let's have a look at the first instrument that's being widely used in measuring teachers' job satisfaction. Job satisfaction refers to any combination of psychological, physiological, and environmental circumstances that causes a person truthfully to say, I am satisfied with my job. The definition given in 1935 by Hopcock and still in use right now. Teachers or lecturers' job satisfaction can theoretically and empirically link to a plethora of key teaching and learning outcomes. Okay, satisfied teachers will have these things in their repertoire of assets. Okay. Lecturers and teachers who are satisfied with their jobs are likely to be more effective, an outcome that contributes immensely to the overall success of an educational institution. Satisfaction is reliably and positively related to teaching interest, instructional competency, job performance, professional commitment and engagement, even emotional adjustment, improved health, enhanced work environments, and more importantly, student outcome. These have been verified in empirical research, theoretical research, testing the relationship between satisfaction and teachers and even student outcome. The inverse relationship is true for teachers with little or no satisfaction with their work. They find little enjoyment in what they do daily. In fact, a group of researchers from Kuliah of Education, they tried to understand better about how to measure teacher satisfaction. They have conducted a study that validated or provided new information about job satisfaction, in which job satisfaction not only either overall or general or just based on the specific facet of satisfaction, satisfaction towards workload, enumeration, satisfaction toward professional growth, and satisfaction towards collegiality or relationship among peers. But also they establish the fact that a bi-factor model, which include the 4 specific factors and general factors, can be used in interpreting teachers' job satisfaction. So that's what some of my colleagues at the Kuliah have found in their study. Apart from this, still there are many instruments that can help us to measure the intangibles. For instance, another one here. This is something on, this instrument can be used to measure online, okay? Online teaching self-efficacy. The advocates of social cognitive theory argue that self-efficacy is the nucleus of human agency. This is based on the work by Bandura. One's efficacy beliefs determine the effort one exerts in a given task and the levels of perseverance one shows in the face of difficulties and adversities. Self-efficacy beliefs from one's aspiration, goals, and motivation. Accordingly, online teaching efficacy refers to a lecturer's judgment and expectation of being in control of the online teaching and learning environment and being able to execute instruction satisfactorily. So this is just more than confidence. Confidence is somewhat general. This is very specific to the task that we are assigned to deliver. It is a mental construct that affects a teacher's decision on whether to attempt an instructional task, invest a certain amount of effort, and be persistent in expending time and energy. An efficacious teacher or lecturer would more likely attribute, this is quite critical to be understood. An efficacious teacher or lecturer would be more likely to attribute students' success and failure to himself, to the instructional efforts within his or her control, not pointing fingers to the student, let alone the parents or the society, especially those within our means to control. Hence, teacher efficacy beliefs would make a difference in student learning. A recent meta-analytic review suggests that efficacy beliefs are a function of teachers' pedagogical training. If we have this, that is, if we are having good feeling about in-service training is promising in enhancing lecturers and teachers' self-efficacy. So this instrument is an adaptation from Robinia 2008, and still, especially now in the when we are having online classes, is very useful for us to gauge our own level of confidence and try to improve. There's a need. There's two instruments that we can consider for self-reflection in order to improve the intangibles in us to help students to improve. There are other instruments. So instruments abound actually. So we can have a look now at the other two instruments related to student intangibles. This one here about a student poor reading habits, procrastination, which is prevalent among over 70% of students, university students in particular. It refers to the tendency to postpone the completion of activities such as reading activities, projects, and assignment unnecessarily. Procrastination will likely inflict undue stress, anxiety, and ultimately learned helplessness. Also, many procrastinators feel guilty and helpless for failing to complete tasks and assignments. The persistent failure to complete important tasks is systematically associated with low self-esteem, poor self-efficacy, and motivation. Students who are procrastinators tend to be free riders in group projects, and their attitudes affects their relationships with other students, turning off good-spirited peers and inciting anger among team members. This self-defeating tendency is inversely related with a student's social emotional well-being. In a nutshell, procrastination hinders a student's sejahtera growth. Thus, to make a difference, it is a good practice to diagnose the prevalence of our students' tendency to procrastinate. Okay? This is the instrument that we may try to use at the onset of the semester of our course to help them to overcome the problem. Okay, so this instrument developed by my supervisor back in 1991. It's a long time ago. And there's another instrument which has been developed by the Office of Strategy and Institutional Change, OSIC, this year, the current year, 2021, in the context of the university, is trying to measure a component of sejahtera. Sejahtera is treated as an outcome measure. Okay. In our university, sejahtera is treated, seems to be treated to me as an outcome measure rather than a predictor of success. The team at OSIC has developed a 50-item questionnaire to measure the prevalence of sejahtera among students and staff. They call it sejahtera culture. The instrument includes a sub-construct of Islamic worldview and spiritual orientation, which are not easily traceable in the conventional literature. Data collected from their pilot test supported the adequacy of the psychometric properties of the measure, in particular its content-related validity. So there's a lot of instruments. What we need to do is to identify what we want to measure, that is identifying the intangible, and then try to look for the appropriate instrument. There are many instruments on many competing instruments on one particular intangible. We may try to get permission to use, to modify the instruments which are available. These are different from clinical, psychological instruments which can only be used by certified personnel. But most of these intangible construct, we can use it for good reason. Now, let's go to the next final. Okay, before we go to the final point, let's say we are having this situation. We have done the measurement. We collected data from students, and we find that, suppose we find that there's a high propensity to procrastinate among our students, or poor reading habit among our students, or we have problems with ADAP. Online teaching and learning ADAP seems to be disturbing us. So my question is, how are we going to act on these intangibles? I like to invite you to share with me your thoughts for the next couple of minutes. You may use the chat box to share with me, and Prof, my boss, Prof, I know can tell me what are the interesting points. So please, let's have 2-3 minutes for you to react to these issues that we may have.
So for those who are in Zoom and also in YouTube, so you can post your suggestion. The question was, what is it that we need to do if we have assess and we know what is lacking or the state of the intangibles of our students. So what's our plan of action? Okay, Prof. There is no question, no suggestion or no comment made on the chat box on Zoom, but I'm not sure about in the YouTube. So,
Okay, Prof, thank you so much. Never mind. I think even though you are not putting it down in writing, you have some ideas how to resolve that problem. Just let me continue with the discussion, with the presentation. Brother Ridwan, how do I? Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, now. Even you have been thinking about that, may I congratulate you for your good ideas. You may start to think. That's the first step. But what we are merely doing, what we is in most cases can be considered as reactive. That is, we are reacting to the problem. It's good to be reactive, but at the same time, don't ignore. We may attempt to be proactive. To be proactive, we should stick close to our beliefs about how we learn best, and stick close to our beliefs about human nature. Now, it's time for us to try to humanize assessment. Okay, focusing on assessment, not just education. We'll try to humanize assessment. This is, as I stated at the very beginning, this is an attempt to initiate our thinking, our thoughts toward the whole process. Is going to be a long journey to really humanizing education, but this should be our starting point. Okay, so we are going to talk about assessment of intangibles now. More specifically, the classroom assessment. That's what we are doing. We are not talking about standardized nationwide assessment, but it's the classroom assessment that we can attempt to really humanize. Contribute to humanizing education. It is difficult to dismiss the importance of measuring the intangibles. We cannot deny its importance. This is in keeping with the notion that what gets measured gets taught. What gets taught gets learned. Therefore, what gets measured gets learned. Measuring students' intangibles is imperative, but not enough to promote learning. Years ago, 1999, Canibano and friends have made this statement. Measurement, measuring teachers' job satisfaction, measuring customer satisfaction, all those things, without further action makes no sense. In other words, measurement of intangibles asks for immediate management of intangibles. For example, there is no point in evaluating customer satisfaction if no action is taken afterwards to address the unsatisfactory aspects. It does not matter whether the precise effect of an action or activity is properly assessed. It does not matter. It is very likely not to have the adequate tools for that assessment. What matters is the action. The action is needed. What we really need to do is to assess this intangible rather than simply measuring them. We should explore beyond the practice of assessment of learning. Let me emphasize this. Okay, I'm sorry. Did I miss? Have I missed a lot? Just this slide. Okay, thank you, brother. Okay, I've been sharing earlier, which I think most of you missed the point because some technical glitches happened. What we are saying is that it is difficult to dismiss importance of measuring the intangible. What we really need to do is assess these intangibles rather than simply measuring them. We should explore beyond the practice of assessment of learning. The title of this discussion is Assessment for Learning. I think this is the first time I'm introducing the concept of assessment of learning. As Murabbis, we should consider assessment for learning as a means of helping students to learn and therefore work hard on getting it done. As indicated in the empirical research literature, assessment for learning is one of the promising tools to promote learning and teaching excellence. Let's get back to this link that we have seen earlier, assessment beliefs link. Given this understanding, we can now create, in fact, that's what we've been doing, a process, a clear step-by-step process of assessing the intangibles. First, a lecturer should define the assessment objectives to the point that the lecturer and his or her students know precisely how the results are to be used, the results of the assessment. Of importance is the assessment objectives should address the course learning outcome, the CLO, in which the targeted intangibles are embedded or identified clearly. Second, the lecturer must clearly articulate the targeted assessment task to students, making it clear to them the nature and purpose of the task, the submission deadlines, plural, rubric, and exemplary work. This step supports the principle of fairness in conducting assessment. Third, the lecturer should periodically discuss with students the details of the assessment plan. So there is an assessment plan that we have related to the second step just now. This is the feed forward component of the assessment process. Research indicates that most students look forward to getting clear feedforward from their lecturers. In the case of the difficult to quantify intangibles, necessary intervention and tasks are to be designed and put in place. A classroom intervention here means to elicit students' engagement and performance in the intangibles. Fourth, it is a good practice for lecturers to seek students' views and preferences about how and when they wish to be assessed, which in turn would contribute to the making of informed decision on the task and corresponding timeline. Fifth, provide sufficient time and opportunities for students to prepare and execute the tasks and measure and evaluate their performance. Six, communicate the results to students using feedback techniques that are constructive, informative, and immediate. The lecturer should also invite and facilitate open and free flow of student to lecturer and student to student interactions and communication. And seven, the assessment process should encourage students to revise and improve their performance based on multiple sources of feedback from lecturers, from peers, and their own self-reflection. All interactions and communication should be appropriately guided by Islamic values, norms, expectation, niat, and adab. Well, this is the process which we may improve as time passes by, but basically this is in keeping what the best practices in assessment for learning in terms of the steps. So we may try to see whether it works in our in the case of our intangibles. Let me share with you two examples here before we end our session. This is the assessment of students' self-regulated behavior by integrating self-regulated learning into academic contents. An example, when we teach a course, how can this be done? Okay, let's say for this, before that, let me talk something about the assessment, self-regulated learning first. One recurring complaint among lecturers is that many students delay and some even ignore to read the assigned materials until the very last minute. As indicated earlier, more than 70% of undergraduates are prone to procrastinate. It is a self-defeating tendency which may limit their true potential, be it socially, psychologically, or spiritually. Persistent procrastination hampers one's engagement in lifelong learning, which is a big intangible, which is also what Islam encourages that Muslims do. To help students to self-regulate their learning behavior, we may initiate the use of incentive motivation. That's the intervention, incentive motivation. One example of incentive motivation is frequent testing, which, if correctly used, creates an avenue for students to perform, to self-regulate, and avoid failures. As an incentive motivation, frequent testing activates student desire to succeed, and thereby driving their efforts to read the assigned reading materials. Okay, this example here related to a course in an undergraduate programs in education. By the end of the semester, this is the course plan to be shared with students. By the end of the semester, you will be able to demonstrate your mastery of knowledge and understanding of the concept and skills related to school-based assessment. The soft skill, either self-regulated behavior or lifelong learning. It's the same thing in this context. The assessment method, the first one that is relevant, that is a series of quiz, 7 quizzes with a total mark of 35%. Okay, the test will be given marks 5 points per quiz, and it will be taken into account in the counting of the final grade. The contents to be tested, concepts and skills covered in the first 5 chapters of the textbook. Then we share with students, we plan this first, frequent testing intervention. Students are to read 1 chapter of the textbook every week for 7 weeks. Okay, for each chapter, the student will take a 30-minute either MCQ or completion item test in the first meeting of the week before instruction. A total of 7 quizzes will be administered throughout the semester. So a total of 35 marks. At the end of each quiz, students exchange their papers to grade one another's responses. Each quiz carries a maximum of 5 points, the total of which will be part of their final grade. And one more point, students may request, in fact, they are encouraged for a receipt to improve their marks. So they have to reread the chapter again and give new set of items on the chapter. At the end of the semester, this is another one. At the end of the semester, you will sit, or the students will sit for a final exam on the textbook topics which are not covered on the quizzes, different chapters, okay, in the final exam. And based on this tested, validated, okay, using classroom experimental research, previous studies have shown that frequent testing improves student reading habits. That's the idea. It's not about the marks. It's not about how much they get. It's about trying to differentiate among them. It's about reading habits, about the intangible. It reduces students' tendency to procrastinate. They are motivated. That's why we call it incentive motivation, prompting them to read the material to be tested in weekly tests. And they carry these skills or this behavior independently once the treatment is no longer there, when the teacher is no longer giving them tests, but they know that they can do better with regular period, consistent reading. They'll do that, inshallah. In the final exams, students who are frequently tested significantly outperform those who are not subjected to frequent testing. As an assessment strategy, frequent testing has a real value to serve as a lifelong training guide for students to develop their own, or to develop on their own, their self-regulated learning potential. Of course, there are other instructional interventions to overcome poor study habits. The literature has indicated that tasks such as requiring students to submit a 2-page scenario writing relating the contents of a textbook to their personal life, into their personal life, generating weekly questions, weekly note-taking, elaborative outlining, and coding of information are equally effective. And there are still new techniques to help students to improve or to improve their learning behavior. Okay, another example here. This is something quite relevant to us in IIUM in particular. That is empowering students to self-regulate, I use that word again, and peer assess their adab. Okay, we don't leave adab to parents to deal with. We are equally responsible to see that students learn adab by empowering, giving them the power and the responsibility to develop their adab. Course learning outcome, this is not specific to any particular learning outcome. Maybe this the soft skill. I'm not sure whether I'm using the right phrase. The soft skill in any course. By the end of the semester, you Human student will be able to demonstrate appreciation and beliefs and practice student to lecturer and student to student adab. The soft skill that has been identified is student adab in remote learning, and several qualitative methods of assessment being used. This is what Prof. Parish, the Honorable Deputy Director, been mentioning earlier. It's not cannot be quantified at this particular stage. We don't know much about this. So it's the application of some intervention techniques such as nominal group technique, and the assessment will include students' solution on adab in online teaching, student owns resolution, group leaders anecdotal and periodic reports to the lecturer, and periodic self-reflective record. It's not periodic. We may even use students' journal entry or diary entry, but periodic peer assessment can be useful. The contents cut across all academic contents and interaction and intervention. The plan how to intervene. Intervention and measurement. Start with the lecturer's intervention. The lecturer will moderate the nominal group technique. The class will be divided into small groups of 4 to 6 students. The group leader is appointed, and the group is supposed to identify problems that exist or may exist in online teaching adab, student lecturer, student adab, and if possible, not possible, the student also should identify the Islamic-based solution to those potential or prevailing problems, and they will present their ideas in the group, get feedback and feed forward, and finally the group using this nominal technique will formulate and share the resolution, the rules on remote teaching and learning interaction. Then students are allowed to perform. At the same time, each student is to record in their diary or journal entry their reactions and feelings of student lecturer and student interaction, and reaction and feelings on other aspects of remote learning. Be mindful that we are talking about qualitative elements here, reaction and in particular feelings. That's what matters in measurement too. It's not just numbers. It's something that only students can describe in their own social contextual environment. Periodic reports by group reader on what works and what fails to work. Then come back to us, lecturers' self-reflection of the whole process, maybe by the mid of the semester, and follow-up actions, such as revisit the technique if it doesn't work, and use a different technique, modify the intervention mode. So Islamic educational institutions are supposed are responsible for transmitting adab. In our efforts to Islamize knowledge, to create good Muslims, adab must be emphasized every step of the way. This is important because adab is an intangible outcome imbued with Islamic values, principles, norms, and expectation. Prophet Muhammad emphasized the fact that verily, the best among us, that's what his Prof. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the best among us is the best in character. By the way, most Muslim educators are willing, that's what research inform us, are willing to teach adab in class using a plethora of instructional strategies and teaching methods to execute this responsibility. However, it is difficult to measure and evaluate students' adab, let alone to assess its growth and development. So the plan here, trying to address the plan that we have on the screen, trying to address this difficulty to assess its growth and development, not to measure the prevalence or the levels of adab, but to look at its growth. Instruments that yield quantifiable data on students' adab are hard to find. What is even more challenging is the fact that the quality of students' adab is not an element of learning that is considered in the final grade. So some of us just say it's not important because the grades do not depend on that. To address this concern, we may use a qualitative assessment method, a method that empowers students to collaboratively develop and assess their own adab. The assessment process engages students to develop and monitor their own social ethical behaviors. That's what the plan is shown on the screen is telling us. I think I just skip nominal group technique details because we can find it in the World Wide Web. Apart from the nominal group technique, we may also consider other group-based intervention techniques, such as value clarification technique, group dynamic intervention, mindfulness-based treatment, problem solving, and cognitive behavioral therapy, but the last one being used mostly by counselors. Okay, I'll just skip this one. We submit to the idea that assessment of learning, quizzes, examination, midterm tests, even term papers which are to be submitted and graded at the end of the semesters, projects which do not have timelines and submissions, drafts. We don't say that they are no good. Okay, we believe that they offer evidence of student achievement. It's a very important term here, student achievement. And this is critical for institutional accountability and public consumption than what parents and government and politicians want to see. However, we maintain that assessment for learning provides opportunities to trigger students to achieve more, including the intangibles and generic competency. Equally important, assessment for learning enable us to enhance teaching and learning, which ultimately will contribute to humanizing education. Therefore, our final submission, my final submission here is that every educational institution should execute a balanced practice of assessment of learning and assessment for learning. May Allah guide us on the correct assessment path. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Sahari. It's very eye-opening, very provoking. We've got a list of questions on the screen, but because we're very limited in time, so inshallah we'll try to answer a few. But the other questions, probably we will address them in the YouTube as time goes on. Okay, so let me just read a few questions that came first. The first one is, Prof. Sahari, with this value-oriented assessment, There's some people who've asking that probably the training that the teachers and lecturers need to have will also have to change. So do some policies at the school and also policies at the university. So what's your take in that?
I'm not sure about schools. Honestly, from what I've heard, they have trainings, but we are not sure the contents and the focus of the training. But Alhamdulillah, at our institution, we have started that. Our current dean, when she was the director of our Center for Professional Development, they've started having more what they call it basic teaching and learning teaching method trainings, giving focus on assessment. So I think yes, it should be lecturers should be given exposure. Not only that, they should be entrusted, and we should learn from our colleagues in their respective discipline on how they do it and share that with the rest of the world, inshallah. So the concerted effort must be done not only in terms of training, but in terms of helping them to apply, which is, I think, the university authorities, in particular the audit units and our knowledge KCA knowledge center should focus on helping the lecturers, our lecturers, to align our learning outcomes and instruction as well, because the assessment for learning includes instruction, includes intervention, and this should be a clear plan of way forward in addressing this need.
Okay. All right. So in other words, IIUM leading the way. We've already had a few trainings, packages of trainings to not just train on the change of mindset, but also the know-how, how to do it. But okay.
By the way, I'm sorry, Prof. I'm sorry to intervene before I forget. In fact, we are starting to work with our colleagues in private Islamic schools, particular under the umbrella of GAPIM, to facilitate teachers' mastery of these new skills. I don't say it's new. There are some new ideas about how to change the way we teach and the way we assess our students. We are working with GAPIM and Ikram Muslim and a few other institutions. Sure.
All right, Prof. From your exemplars just now, there are a few questions from the practitioners' perspective.
Maybe a question.
They are asking, can teachers change or can lecturers change the course outline once we find out all these things about what needed to be changed in terms of behavior and in the intangibles? Can we change the course outline? Can we change the assessment used, or can we even do without the examinations? Recurring questions in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have the privilege of learning things that's happening with the university policy at Senate level. The chance to listen to them, and in fact, the university has agreed to allow us to change quite flexible way of dealing with the contents and even the assessment method that we have in our course outline. So long that what we are doing, we have to inform the kuliah, the department that we are in. So it's something that we can, the university is kind enough to allow us to be more flexible and to me more innovative in our profession.
I see some eager questions from the participants in the Zoom. So maybe I can open one or two questions.
Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dato Prof. Sahari, for giving us many things about education, especially in our schools. What I worry now about what we call in Islam talaqi. Prof?
Yes, I'm listening.
Talaqi, that means face to face. Some subject we must together with guru. So what is the best way in our situation today to practice talaqi, to make some subject like that, Quran, for example, how to make our tongue, our lisan, to make sure our students can follow us. How the strategy to help us, Prof.
Alhamdulillah, thank you, Ustaz, for asking that question. To be honest, I don't know the answer. Yes, I don't know the answer. Maybe what I can think of is we need to do proper investigation in this particular phenomenon. We have to study this situation. We have to look from all aspects and then try to see maybe a few options that can be used to address our concern about students not being able to face the teacher, the teacher not being able to communicate in person with students. I think it's a very valid issue that we have to address systematically. That's assessment, Ustaz. That's why we did assessment not only on students but on our practice. So I don't have the answer, honestly.
Okay. So yeah, I think if we are now open to this idea, we need to realize the changes that need to be done. What we can do or should be doing is actually hold our hands together, work together in order to make the practices along the way, the spirit of assessment for learning. But Prof, because we are running out of time, I just want to lump some questions that are similar, and the last type of questions that are similar. Many of us are still very exam oriented because we have the course outline, we have the kursus, all the kerja kursus and examinations. So what do we do with content loaded and exam loaded courses?
Okay, if we recall the last statement in the last slide, not before, thank you, Gracia, all that, there's something mentioned like we should try, okay, this is a courage to try, okay, which is an intangible by itself. We should keep on trying to practice balanced assessment, a balanced practice of assessment of which is the content-based examination and assessment for learning. By the way, I really learned something for the last few years, that there are courses even at university level which cannot be tested other than by giving exam, by giving objective tests, in fact. Okay, so is the person who's teaching the course or the teacher that they are being prescribed by the ministry, the lecturers, is the best person to know the worth of the contents. Is it something that students must memorize, only then they can master the subsequent courses or subsequent courses? So that being the case, heavy weightage should be given to recall and understanding assessment, okay, which is assessment of learning. On the other hand, there are many courses as well which seem to be leading toward the skill-based courses which require students to demonstrate something, including adab, demonstrate their adab. So these kind of courses, in fact, adab shouldn't be tested using objective multiple choice question, should be tested using assessment for learning. So at this point in time, there's no hard and fast rule to tell where we should be heading. We should be the expert, which are teachers and lecturers, to decide the proportion of assessment of learning and assessment for learning to be distributed in the course that we are teaching.
Okay, I think we do not have time to entertain more questions, but inshallah, with the string in YouTube, we will probably come into and fill in the answers or the queries that you have here in after listening to Prof. Sahari. So just a summary. So in the beginning, I think just to summarize, there are a lot of congratulations, congratulatory comments post in the YouTube as well as in Zoom, all expressing their gratitude and happiness in listening to your lecture, Prof, simply because it's something that we all share, most of us share the spirit for the way forward as far as education and educating assessment is concerned. So you mentioned about all this is nothing new at the beginning. You mentioned that all this is nothing new because we've actually been guided divinely, divine guidance from Allah or from the Creator, through which we have to learn how to live, and also how to return one day to our final abode. So in living, in learning how to live, that is where you equate it with all the other things in terms of intangible that people must have, in terms of attributes and personality, in order to become insan sejahtera that will contribute to the sejahtera of the family, community, as well as the nation. And the second part of your presentation, that's where a lot of questions came because you provoke us with what and how. So what are the intangibles and how do you measure? And most important punching point is that it's not about how to measure them, but most importantly is to assess them so that these things, all these attributes, all these intangibles will be present in the system of education or in the courses at course level that you are teaching, so that you will develop that in the persons or in the students at the end of the learning experience. Yeah. So with that, I thank you, Prof. Sahari. Alhamdulillah, I think this is a very eye-opening and a very motivating lecture. So we wish you all the best. I pass the mic back to the MC, Dr. Putri. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ainul and Professor Dato Dr. Mohamad Sahari for the remarkable lecture. Now, without further ado, it is with a great pleasure I would like to invite Professor Dr. Nolida binti Abu Qasim, Dean of Kuliah of Education, to deliver the closing speech for this event. Fatafatul mashkura.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Putri. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah, it's such a, I think one professorial lecture is not enough. Right, one professorial lecture is not enough on such an important subject. Okay, but I'd like to thank Prof, our respected Deputy Rector, Prof. Haris Ismail, for staying throughout the lecture, Alhamdulillah, and for our respected deans and directors, beloved lecturers. I see friends' faces on the screen, Alhamdulillah, those from KOED and those from outside, yes, not forgotten. Okay, Alhamdulillah, okay, even though age is catching up very fast. It's been a great honor, and I must congratulate the team, okay, the organizing team that have done such a good job, mashallah, alhamdulillah, and also the participation of the those who had, you know, find time despite their busy schedule to attend this professorial lecture. Now, we are actually very fortunate and very honored to have Prof. Dato Dr. Sahari Nordin with us, and who is very learned and have great experience. And you know, it's difficult to try and summarize or to try and see what the things that he has done and the wisdom that he has tried to convey to us in terms of teaching and learning. And I do agree with him, you know, that each type or each form of assessment has its own place. And it is for us actually to use our wisdom. We have that flexibility, but we must use our wisdom to make sure that we apply the good principles of teaching of assessment so that we achieve what we seek to achieve. And of course, the measurement of intangibles is something which is quite debatable, you know. So when we talk about intangibles, what are the intangibles, I think, that we would like to develop. So I've written a lot, quite a bit of things that I wanted to say, but you know, I'm just overwhelmed with you know, this mashallah, such a nice turnout, and you know what has been said and what has been shared, that I've forgotten all of them. All I can remember is to thank everybody and thank you very much. Perhaps maybe we can do this as a monthly discourse or a bi-weekly discourse where we can share our thoughts and ideas, have more intellectual, you know, more discussions actually, get the opinions of others, and then help each other to get along in terms of our assessment. All right, so not just one-off professorial lecture, but maybe the Kuliah of Education would actually, you know, make this as an event that would be a series of intellectual discourse, inshallah. So I like to thank everybody, especially, you know, first and foremost, our eminent speaker, Prof. Dato, Dr. Sahari Nordin. I can't see him anymore on the screen. Prof, where are you? And then our deputy, yes. Yes, thank you very much. You know, you truly make KOED, you know, very happy and very proud, alhamdulillah. And to our respected Deputy Director, Prof. Ahmad Faris Ismail, and the, you know, busy deans and directors who make time to come, alhamdulillah. And for, of course, you know, our beloved brothers and sisters for attending this professorial lecture. May Allah bless you all, and may Allah guide us so that we gain His blessings in this dunya, in akhirah, insyaAllah. Wabillahi taufiq, wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah, wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Nolida, for the meaningful closing speech. So we have come to the end of the session of this event. On behalf of Kuliah of Education, I would like to thank each of you for being here despite of your busy schedule this morning. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to apologize if there were any shortcomings throughout the ceremony. All the good things come from Allah, and all the shortcomings come from our own weaknesses. With that, I end my duty as the Master of Ceremony for today's event with the recitations of Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Ans. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Sahari. Thank you, Prof. Nolida, and everybody.
Thank you very much.